Max Verstappen showed his racing skills again, but this time it wasn't good. When other drivers put pressure on him, the Dutch driver started doing his old tricks like he did back in 2021. The difference was that Norris didn't want to give up in the real fight at turn 2, and he got hurt the most. The big question is, will we see the old Verstappen come back? And more importantly, can Norris keep putting pressure on him like he did in Austria? It's safe to say that the Austrian Grand Prix was going really well for Red Bull until the second part of the race. Verstappen had trouble with the hard tires, even though he kept a steady lead over second-place Norris by about 7 to 8 seconds. But once the third part started with medium tires, it was clear that drama was coming before the cars even got on track. Because of the slow pit stop for the three-time world champion, once Norris got behind Verstappen, he wanted nothing less than the win. But the Dutchman had other plans. He moved while braking and didn't give the position back once Norris was at the corner of turn 2. All of this came to a head on lap 64 when Norris wanted to take the outside line of turn 2, but Verstappen closed the door again on the same move, braking while moving. This caused contact between the race leaders. After this, you could see the tire punctures, and it was obvious that one of them was going to lose more than the other. In this case, that was Norris. The damage to his car was really bad, and while Verstappen was able to crawl back to the pit lane and change tires and finish 5th, getting 10 points while the second and third drivers in the championship got 0 points. It was definitely unfair to him. You could see this through his comments when talking about this situation. Verstappen used all kinds of words to avoid saying it was my fault. It's obvious that a champion like him with 3 titles and 61 wins won't just give in under pressure from Norris to say sorry in public. As Verstappen said, I need to look back at how or why we touched. Of course we will talk about it. It's just unfortunate that it happened. I felt like sometimes he dive-bombed so late on the brakes. One time, he went straight. One time I had to go around the sausage, otherwise we would have touched. I think it's also the shape of the corner that caused these kinds of problems. Sometimes I've had it the other way around too, and it is what it is. It's never nice to come together. However, Verstappen blaming someone for dive-bombing after the moves he made in 2021's Saudi Grand Prix and the last overtake in that season on Hamilton that won the championship is kind of mean, especially now when he has much better racing skills than Norris, which is made up for by how much better the McLaren car is. Nonetheless, it's Verstappen who has gotten massive criticism from the Formula One world, even though his own team is defending his actions. This makes sense since he's currently the lifeline of Red Bull in these tough times when Perez can't even beat a Haas and finish the race between both American-based team drivers. But this brings up a very important question. Is Verstappen back to his old ways of racing? Obviously, we've seen a lot of this in 2021, and many of us were supporting the Dutchman because we were kind of bored from Hamilton winning all the time. So when Verstappen made a move like he did against Norris in Austria, it was called brave and aggressive. Just like the one in Brazil against Hamilton where the 7-time world champion almost went off the track. But either way, the cards have been shuffled again and Verstappen has been pushed like he was by Norris, who clearly has the faster car and faster package. He's just missing the racing skills and championship experience he needs to compete with. Verstappen. The close friendship that these two share is very likely to change now after what happened recently. When talking about this situation more, Lando Norris said, I looked forward to probably just a fair battle, a strong fair battle, but I wouldn't say that is what it was in the end. And it's a tough one to take. It was a mistake-free race from my side and I feel like I did a good job, but I got taken out of the race. So nothing more than that. There is a rule and you are not allowed to react to the other driver, which is what Verstappen did 3 times out of the 3 attacks I made. 2 times I managed to avoid it and not lock up and run into him, and the 3rd time he just ran into me. I was just trying to drive my race and he was clearly a lot slower at the end. He ruined his own race as much as he ruined mine. This is quite an interesting comment because, if you think about it, Verstappen was blamed a lot in the past for actions just like this. He wouldn't care about the outcome of the crash as long as the other driver was taken out. Even though in 2022 and 2023 we've barely seen any driving like this. Only in the beginning of the 2022 season did we see clean racing between Leclerc and Verstappen, but that's mainly because the Monaco driver is probably the only one on the grid, along with Hamilton, who's able to avoid these types of contact and race him properly. This is something that Norris would have to learn a lot in his career. People have also compared this incident to what could have been back in 2021, like the racing in Brazil where Hamilton avoided contact many times. All of those times were called brave driving from Verstappen. Still, the team boss of McLaren, Andrea Stella, believes that the entire world knows who is at fault for what happened during the race except for a small group of people. If nothing is taken care of after this weekend, situations like this will happen again because they haven't been dealt with properly after the 2021 mess. When talking about this more, Stella said, I see that the entire population in the world knows who is responsible except for a group of people in Red Bull. But the problem is that if you don't address these things honestly, they'll come back. They have come back today because they were not addressed properly in the past when there were some fights with Lewis that needed to be punished in a harsher way. Just like this, you learn how to race in a certain way which we can consider fair and square. There have been many episodes of this, and the fact is we have so much respect for Red Bull and so much respect for Max. They don't need to do this as a way to almost hurt your reputation. Why would you do that? The blame is definitely on Red Bull's side, even though his team is defending Norris's move and saying that there was just enough space for Norris to go outside of that corner. But the graphics and closer pictures tell a different story. Obviously, it wouldn't have even come to this if it wasn't for the slow pit stop for Verstappen that cost him around 3 to 4 seconds. With Norris having brand new medium compound tires, while Verstappen's were a couple of laps old, which is extremely important in scorching temperatures like the ones we saw in Austria, it was bound to happen that a fight was going to occur. A bit of the blame could have been put on Norris because he had many opportunities to close the fight a couple of laps earlier, but because of Verstappen's aggressive style and championship experience, the Dutchman always managed to get on top of things in the 64 laps of racing that we saw on the track. Either way, Silverstone is right around the corner, and this is a track that suited McLaren heavily in the past. This will be more than important for the future in both championships, as they are now slowly but surely getting closer to Ferrari in the Constructor Championship thanks to the sprint race results and Piastri finishing ahead of Sainz. With all of this in mind, the rest of the season is going to be very competitive and interesting, but the real question is whether Norris can keep applying constant pressure to Verstappen, and if so, will the three-time world champion go back to the old ways of hard racing where he wouldn't care what would happen to his rival as long as he's the driver ahead? Like he showed in Brazil in 2021, maybe Norris could use a lesson or two from Hamilton and Leclerc, the only two drivers on the grid who managed to race in a clean way, wheel-to-wheel with Verstappen. But obviously he needs a lot more experience and a clearer advantage in the car to be put in front of the three-time world champion on a regular basis. What do you think about Verstappen's old tricks? And do you think they could be back now that he's under pressure from Norris? Pressure that was kind of created because of the slow pit stop and the higher tire wear on the hard tires in the second part. Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.